IWD is celebrated on March 8th every year. The day aims to help nations worldwide eliminate discrimination against women. It's also focused on helping women gain full and equal participation in global development. Hundreds and thousands of events are held worldwide to recognise the progress that has been made by women and to celebrate their achievements. And today, the world will be coming together to celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity. So make International Women's Day your day and do what you can to truly make a positive difference for women. The campaign theme for this year is #ChooseToChallenge. A challenged world is an alert world. Individually, we're all responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day, every day. And we can choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. We can choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Collectively, we can help to create an inclusive world. From challenge comes change, so let's all choose to challenge. Will you take part in this campaign? So strike the Choose to Challenge pose with your hand high to show your commitment to choose to challenge inequality, call out bias, question stereotypes, and help forge an inclusive world. Hand up high to show you're in, and we'll take a photo of all of our attendees doing this to add to our social media. So this year, we've decided to support period poverty, and rightly so. Sisters have been tackling period poverty since 2018, and there's been no slowing down. In fact, the pandemic has highlighted the problem on a bigger scale. Sisters have a seat on the government's task force as advisors on this issue, but with the pandemic, the group meetings are on hold. They are now delivering up to 6,000 pads in a week across the region, and these are distributed to anyone who needs them. I'd now like to introduce the founder of Sisters to tell us more, the amazing Neelam Hira.
Hello everybody, I hope everyone's having a great International Women's Day. To be honest, I can't believe it's come around so fast. I mean, who'd have thought in a year's time we would all be doing this virtually? So I'm here to talk to you about period poverty. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see that.
Perfect. So period poverty, who would think that in 2021 we'd still be talking about period poverty, right? I'm going to give you some facts about what period poverty actually is. And it's estimated that 49% of girls have missed a day of school due to their periods, because 1 in 5 have reported being a victim of bullying or teasing because of their periods, feeling that shame and embarrassment about their periods, and also not being able to afford physical products. And this all comes down to education around what a period is, and a lack of education, a menstrual education across the UK. Plan International, the charity, found 10% of girls are actually unable to afford sanitary products. And this also comes down to how products are changing so much. We've gone from having sanitary pads, tampons, to now having things like reusable products. And it's a real education around what products should people be using. So we want to start improvising and really supporting girls on this journey, especially through that really important puberty years. This one might shock you. British women spend as much as £18,450 in their lifetime on their periods, which is fascinating when you actually think about the amount of money you're spending on this. And that's why a lot of people are turning to reusable projects just to save that sort of money, and also the cause for concern on our environment too. But these are just figures of money that we would never really be talking about. And really, to end it, really some great news is Scotland was the first country in the world to start giving free menstrual products out to all students and pupils. And I think that's a great way forward, and something that the UK should be following suit about. So what can we do to help? So you can contribute physical products, and we've got an Amazon link that they're going to be sharing with you below. Help us reach other communities to support them with our free products. My house currently has a room dedicated to all different types of products. We've got reusable underwear that can be reused for up to 5 years through washing, etc. We've got cups, we've got all manners of different products, and also products that are especially for people with heavy menstrual bleeding due to other chronic illnesses. So we've got lots of different products available for the community. We just need help accessing those communities, and help us distribute products. This is a conversation piece for us, and if you can help us and have these conversations with the community, that would be great. So I'm going to bring it back to us just to talk you a little bit more. Just cancel this. Right, I'm not sharing my screen with you now, am I? Perfect. So we've been doing this for 5 years. 5 years we've been talking about period poverty. And what the pandemic has shown is that these health inequalities and conversations around periods are still not happening. And actually, the burden on us has only got bigger. And as we've said, we're part of the Period Poverty Task Force. We've been talking about this for so long, and we're not seeing change. And one of the things we really want to do this year is see that change, see that physical change, reach into the communities that need us. Because in this day and age, women should have the dignity of being able to afford menstrual products. It's such a shame that we are actually having to give these products because people can't afford them. The other thing is, period poverty isn't just the physical products. For us, it's actually education around periods. 7 out of 10 women that we spoke to and young girls didn't understand what ovulation was. That's a huge part of being a woman. And you should understand what that is. So it's also the education around periods as well, which is a really important conversation. People don't understand when they're having a bad period, so they could have other issues like PCOS or endometriosis. And we need to be talking about periods at such a young age now, so we can actually start tackling the issues sooner. So the link that the Amazon link shows lots of different sanitary products, but it also has books in there which we like to distribute to different schools across the UK, mainly in Birmingham first because that's where we work with. But we really want to educate children first around period poverty. And if everyone wants to be on this journey with us, we'll take you with us, because we really want to eradicate period poverty. This is not a conversation that I want to be having this time next year. So that's everything from me. If you've got any questions, feel free to let me know.
Brilliant, thank you, Neelam. And if anyone's got any questions, if you pop them in the chat box as well throughout the event. But Neelam, to hear that we spend about £18,000 on average in our lifetime is just phenomenal.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, and the Amazon link is in the chat as well for everyone to take a look at. So we're going to move on now to our first panel speaker, who is Sarah Folley, critical care paramedic at the Midlands Air Ambulance. So over to you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you, Sabah. That's brilliant. And thank you, and happy International Women's Day. I'm hoping, just with a couple of slides, just to talk to you about being a critical care paramedic for this amazing charity, and also the challenges that we faced both professionally through COVID and the challenges personally through being a mother, a full-time working mother with 3 school-aged children. So just to start a little bit about our charity, we provide a critical care asset for the most critically injured patients that call 999, and we do this through 3 helicopters and 2 critical care cars. The service that we provide is completely funded through charitable donations. We don't get any money from the government or NHS charities. So it's amazing to be able to be so well funded to be able to, through the charity, to be able to provide 3 helicopters and these cars. And the sort of incidents that we attend are the poorest patients that ring 999. So they might be patients that have had a really nasty car accident. They might be patients that have been stabbed, or if their heart has stopped beating. And COVID has changed the incidents that we go to, and also the way that we work. So if we could just have the next slide, please. So you can probably see from the photo the first challenge that we have come across, which is working in this personal protective equipment, which can be quite heavy and hot. Now, as a critical care team, we provide a lot of treatment that's above and beyond standard ambulance care, and that can be from putting patients to sleep if they need it to protect their brain. It can be giving enhanced pain relief if somebody's in a lot of pain, but it can also be performing surgery at the side of the road in the most critically injured patients. And to do this with the personal protective equipment, which is absolutely needed, has become quite tricky. From the jobs that we attend, they have changed. So we're seeing an increase in domestic violence, unfortunately, push bike accidents, whereas before we might go to car versus car accidents, we're going to car versus push bike as as society have taken to their bikes for exercise. We're seeing an increase in younger patients suffering cardiac arrest, and that may be because of a change in lifestyle, and it may be because of the effects of long COVID. We've been assisting as a charity with the national transfers of COVID patients from full-up ITUs in the area to outlying ICUs, which may have room for patients locally. So we've been flying those patients as far as Southampton. We're also, unfortunately, seeing an increase in gang-related crimes that during the first lockdown, we didn't see any. However, the second and third lockdown, I think the community and the younger demographic are becoming more and more agitated. And unfortunately, only in the last couple of weeks, we've seen shootings and stabbings increase significantly. So apart from all that, as the charity have supported the critical care paramedics to go into hospitals to provide help in the ICUs once or twice a month. So it's really been an all hands on deck situation over this last year. So if we could have the next slide, please. Last one. So changing the subject slightly to looking at women within HEMS. Now, women within the ambulance service, when I started in the ambulance service 24 years ago, it was a very male-dominated role. And I think that was because of the physical aspects of the role. You had to physically lift a heavy stretcher with a patient on up a couple of stairs onto an ambulance. Now, technology has meant that women the changes in technology and having electric stretchers and ramps has meant that the role has become far more accessible for all genders at all ages, which is lovely to see. And we now have a 50-50 split generally across the nation with women to men in the ambulance service. But on HEMS, we still, within our team and nationally, it's approximately 20 to 25% women. And I've tried to think of why this is, and I don't know whether it's because women don't think that they can do the role, or whether it's because of the physical challenges of the role, or whether because of the experience that you need clinically before you can apply for a role on the helicopter would come at about the same time as maybe a woman would choose to have a family or go into something like teaching. So I've thought, actually, how can we choose to challenge this? Well, we need to challenge it through action. And this has been brilliant to make me think as a woman about this, because I didn't realise until I'd looked into it. And we can challenge it at the grassroots. So I do go into schools and I do talk to children from year 8 and above about careers to make them understand that this is more accessible, that you can do these sorts of jobs. I've got a visiting university lecturer role, and it's brilliant to be able to go in and talk to young females and males that are thinking of becoming paramedics, that actually this is a role that is accessible to you, with children or without children. Anybody could look at doing this as a job. So just finally, I think in a role like this, I don't think that we should, like any role, when it comes to saving patients' lives, we need to pick the right person for the job. But what we need to enable as women within this role is that we give everybody the opportunity to be able to apply for roles like this in the future, both men and women. And I'd just like to thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has about the charity or about the roles that we do, or about how we face the pandemic.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. And yes, if anyone's got any questions, if you pop them in the chat box, and we'll, when we get to the Q&A question, we'll come back round to them. But Sarah, out of interest then, so you, as a critical care paramedic during COVID, how did you manage that alongside being a mum and coming home and taking care of your kids as well?
Prior to COVID, I had a lot of help from my parents with childcare. They would have the children, my 3 children, usually about once a week. As soon as COVID hit and it was the unknown, that stopped. And that was primarily because I know that my dad was 70, he was diabetic, and I knew he was high risk if he caught COVID. We had to change that, and it's thanks to the flexibility of the NHS and of the charity that both my husband and I now work complete opposite shifts, which means that since Christmas we've only had 2 days off together. But it just means that somebody is there for the children every day. Unfortunately, my dad did end up catching COVID, and he did end up in ICU for a week and was in hospital for 3 weeks. So COVID has meant, I mean, he's doing really well now, but it has meant massive changes to the way that we operate. But luckily, the long shifts and the night shifts, so my husband would come into work from a day shift and I'd go out on a night shift. It has been challenging. And I'd just actually like to take this opportunity, if we've got any teachers here, to thank them, because I was struggling in the first lockdown with working 12-hour shifts and then going on my days off and teaching 3 children at 3 very different levels, and soon realised that that wasn't sustainable with night shifts and working 12-hour shifts. And so our children all went back to school as key workers, and that lifted the load and just made it really workable. So that has enabled me personally to carry on working for the charity full time, which has been amazing. So thank you, if there's any teachers out there, for that support.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. And I hope on behalf of everyone here that your dad feels better soon as well.
Thank you, thank you.
So our second speaker today is Satnam Rana-Grindley, who's Head of Communications at Greater Birmingham and Solihull Local Enterprise Partnership and a former BBC correspondent. So welcome, Satnam, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Sabah. Thank you to all of you. A happy International Women's Day to everybody who's joined us this morning. I feel really privileged to have the opportunity to speak to you a little bit about my journey in journalism and through to my present day role. I've sort of themed this morning's chat around moments and mindsets, because for me it's small moments that have really spurred on determination and a will to carry on. It's moments that have enabled me to self-reflect. Other moments have made me speak up and stand up for myself and for others. And it's these moments that have really made me the woman I am today. And I'm absolutely sure that these moments will keep coming and going and help me evolve and grow as the years go on. So I'm going to start off with a really early moment that I remember. And it was at some sort of family occasion. I must have been somewhere around the age of 10, I think. I was sat in a room with a very elderly lady and my mum. The elderly lady was sobbing and she was making my mum cry. And I was watching and I felt a little angry. Angry because this elderly lady was sobbing because my mum had 2 daughters and she was praying for sons. And I remember turning around to my mum and saying, "Why is that lady crying? What's wrong with me? I'm a girl, I deserve to be here. You should tell her to shut up, mum." Of course she didn't, because coming from a Punjabi cultural background, you never tell your elders to shut up, you kind of just shut up and listen. But there I was, I think in that moment, around the age of 9 or 10, the feminism in me was born and a fire was lit in my belly. Then came another moment at the behest of my own mother around a similar sort of age, when I was sat in our terraced house watching the TV and my uncle was visiting. And I remember clearly saying to my mum, "I'm going to be on TV one day." And she clipped me around the ear and said, "Shh, good girls don't say things like that." Again, a fire was lit in my belly. I knew it at that moment in time that I would prove that I will be on TV and I will be working in the media. Fast forward and I'm 16, I've done my GCSEs, still determined to do this whole media lark, which my parents can't quite understand. They think it's some sort of pipe dream. And I've got a great maternal uncle who drives me back from London to Wolverhampton, where I'm from. And in that journey, he says to me, "Girl, if you want to do journalism, you follow your dreams. You get all the experience in the world that you can get, find the opportunities and prove to everybody around you that you can do it. Nobody understands. It's not that they don't want you to, but they don't understand because nobody in our family has worked in the media before. And there it was, support from a male, support from an uncle, that again spurred on this determination and inner drive to go out there and work in media. And so the journey carried on, small moments like this, which encouraged me to carry on. I ended up at university in Lancaster to study French and history, but I picked the university not just because it was 100 miles away from home and a bit of freedom was on offer, but also because it had a radio station, and we had the first FM license for a student radio station given to us. But again, I recall the first day that as a fresher, I walked into the lecture hall to join the station, and it was just a room full of men, young men. And I was given a piece of paper and a pen, and I was told to take the notes. You can be the secretary, you can do the minutes for the meetings. Anyway, I kind of like looked at this guy, took the paper on that occasion, sat down to write these notes, all the time thinking in my head, hang on, I'm not here to write notes, I'm here to get some experience in the media. So off I stormed off at the end of that meeting, had a bit of a moan to my girlfriends on my corridor, went back for the next meeting and said, someone else can do the paperwork. I'm here to get a radio show or to be a producer. And that was that. In that moment again, standing up for myself and trying to change the mindset of a room full of men to tell them that women are here also to do radio shows and entertain other students on campus. 4 years passed at university. There were lots of moments where I was women's officer, education and welfare officer, and so I was sort of a condom fairy around campus, promoting safe sex, which is really important, and tackling a lot of taboo subjects. I went on to using an alumni list from my university to gain access to Radio 5 Live. When I graduated, there were two gentlemen who had been at Lancaster University a decade before me, working there. I picked up the phone to them and said I would like to come along and have a look around the radio station and maybe drop off my CV, which I did. And having dropped off that CV, which was ridiculous because I think it said something like Satnam Rana, top banana, the future of broadcasting. You know, really bold and naive in your early 20s when you're putting yourself out there. Anyhow, I dropped off that CV, and a couple of days later I had a call to say that no promises, but somebody has called in sick and we've got a one-day casual contract. Can you come in and work on the breakfast show with Julian Warwicker and Victoria Derbyshire? And that was approximately just over 21 years ago, my first step into the BBC in 1999. Not a glamorous job. I was making cups of tea, printing off scripts, bringing up guests, but all the time learning, listening, learning, watching, observing, and really sort of putting in extra hours by offering up my time to do research and to write scripts. And so the journey continued. But again, there was a moment in those early days that I distinctly remember. After about 9 months of doing this job as a broadcast assistant, I interviewed to become an official researcher for the specialist correspondence at 5 Live. I got the job, and I remember this female, it was really disappointing actually, but it was also partly the making of me as well. This female looking at me and saying, you've got this job, but you can't get that salary, Satnam. You've only just been here 9 months, you can't be on that salary. And I just remember thinking that moment, hang on, I've earned this. I did an interview and I passed that interview. So why would you not give me the reward that I feel as if I need? And so I was stood up for myself, and I got the job, and I got the money that I deserved with that job. And this is something which has occurred in moments of my life, of my working life, which I think we might touch upon in our Q&A later on. Fast forward, I ended up in the Midlands about 18 years ago as a TV trainee, and stayed at Midlands today, but worked in various radio stations on the BBC WM and the BBC Asian network as well. It's not been an easy ride. I stuck at it. I watched many women and men run past me, getting jobs and promotions, quite often without doing interviews, whilst I felt as if I was being interviewed at every twist and turn to get the promotions that I was seeking. But my inner determination, those moments from my childhood through to my teenage years to my early adult years really did spur me on and helped me stay determined and on point with my career. And then came another defining moment about 3.5 years ago, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Still a journalist, still working at BBC Midlands today. And in that moment of being diagnosed, I think the whole world turned upside down, but it also reaffirmed why I had become a storyteller and a journalist. And my way of coping with it was to try and get something good out of a terrible situation. And that was to document my journey so that I could open up the conversation around breast cancer in my community, which is a bit hush about it, but also publicly to enable other women to seek guidance from some of my darker moments that I felt in that journey or that situation I found myself in 4 years ago. And I was very public and vocal about it and documented it over the course of a couple of years. You can find those videos online if you ever want to have a look at them. And then I think at that moment, I came back to work, and it was when Carrie Gracie was doing her pay parity campaign. It made me think about myself in the newsroom. I was a correspondent amongst 4 men sitting at a desk, knowing fully well that I was not being paid the same as them. In fact, I was not even called the same as them. I was not even a correspondent at that point. I was a specialist reporter. And so another moment came in my working life where I had to stand up for myself and point out the differences and correct the differences as well. And they were corrected. So as I left the BBC for a career break last summer to come here at GBSLEP as a head of communications, I think it was my moment of having cancer made me realise that I didn't want to stand still. It made me determined to look forwards and think about myself and think about how I wanted to grow and how I wanted to take part in civic life and how I wanted to create opportunities for others. And here I find myself then as head of communications at GBSLEP, leading a small team, but also growing in a role because I feel that in every moment that I've experienced in my life, there is something to learn. So I'm going to stop there because I've been going on for quite a while. What I do want to say is the theme for International Women's Day is I choose to challenge. So for me, I choose to challenge closed mindsets, because I believe that we all have the ability to grow and to help people grow around us. And I choose to keep that door open behind me and to create opportunities for those who want to go into journalism, go into leadership, go into comms roles. I think it's really important that we keep that door open and we pay forwards as much as we can, especially when we grow into our own roles, into our own person as women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Satnam. I had goosebumps listening to all of that. I loved it how you called it moments and mindsets, and your assertiveness and determination really comes through, challenging, as you said, those closed mindsets. So any questions for Satnam, please do pop them into the chat box. And when we get to the Q&A, we'll be delighted to hear from Satnam again. So our third speaker and our last speaker for today is Sheila Brown, OBE, who's Chief Executive of Newlife, the charity. So Sheila, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm talking from the end of my kitchen. I suspect some of you are doing likewise. Yeah? So I was asked to talk to you today about my journey and how that could perhaps help other women to take a step forward in their lives. So I've got together 8 points which I'd like to share with you. But first of all, put your hands up if you've ever heard of Newlife, the charity for disabled children. Okay, so quite a few of you have. Probably because it's really good to shop with us, more than you've ever heard about the work of the charity. So on this Saturday coming, Newlife will be 30 years old. We launched March the 13th, 1991, and I co-founded the charity with another parent who felt passionate about children and their welfare and their health. a bit about the background to that is my first son was born when I was just coming up to 20. And like most parents, you think you're going to be in the mother care advert, sitting in a rocking chair and nursing a perfect child, and it'll never scream, it'll never be sick, and it'll never, all of those things, and life will be just beautiful, and the sun will fall on you from a beautiful window, and life will be super. It wasn't quite like that, because when my son was born, he was disabled. He was born with a learning difficulty, autism, later on epilepsy, and in older years now a serious cardiac problem. So I guess it wasn't the same for me right from the beginning. Can I say that it was easy? No, it was really hard, very hard. At my darkest moments, I just wanted to give up. I didn't know how to feed him. I didn't know how to stop him crying. I didn't know how to get him to learn. As he grew older, I didn't know how to get him to speak properly. And so I had to reach out to other people. And when I reached out, I found that really they weren't there. The people that I really needed to speak to weren't there, except for other families. So to cut a long story short, I used my own experience to feed into the concept of the charity. And then later on, 7 years later, I had another son who was fine. There was no problems. And then I had my third son and he was fine and there was no problems. But when he was 5, he was struck with a condition called Perthes disease, which effectively put him in a wheelchair and under very major surgery for a large part of his childhood. And I went from being sort of downbeaten by my first experience of disability. And when my youngest was diagnosed with a completely unrelated condition, frankly, ladies, I just got angry. I just got angry. Why? What did I do? Did I step on the cracks between the pavements? You know, I didn't drink, even though it was Christmas. I didn't smoke. Why had all this happened? I needed to understand and I needed to know why. And I guess my search into understanding why my family was affected led me to understand more about medical research. And I took myself off for periods to the research section of the reference library and learned as much as I could about these conditions and understood them. But I also asked a lot of questions. I contacted people who'd done research into my eldest son and my youngest son's conditions and said, why does this happen? What does it do? What can I do? How does it? And asked all the questions and learned over a period of time. So to bring you to a more recent point, I think we funded about £30 million worth of research since we began. We have our own research unit at Great Ormond Street, particularly focusing on the prevention and understanding of birth defects. We also went from research into providing equipment because my youngest son particularly was very dependent on mobility equipment and other equipment. And frankly, it was a nightmare to get it. And I found out from other families, it was a nightmare for them too. And they had to battle to get the equipment their child needs. Now, you're going back now 20 years ago, it was bad. Let me tell you, it's worse today than ever. The situation at the moment, our new survey published last week, shows that 70% of all disabled children are currently living without the equipment that they need. So the passion that Neelam was talking about at the beginning of this day about finding out these enormous impacts on our society is very important, and we can do things about them. Neelam has, I have, many of you probably have. So my first of my points is passion, Find something that you're passionate about. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, you'll never really enjoy it. You'll never get a sense of fulfillment. You'll never find a way to excel, because you need to be able to put your heart and soul into something if you've got a really big plan. So I would say find the passion, whether it's a cause or whether it's a passion in you. I also came from a background of poverty, and being able to step away from poverty was also part of my passion. I didn't want to be the person who had children that also grew up in poverty, probably because of their disability. So find the passion within you and move it forward. Now, for me, the second P, the second point, is philosophy. You may well call it faith. You may call it a set of beliefs. You may call it a set of conducts that you live your life by. Whatever you choose to call it, it becomes a personal philosophy. It's about what you will and won't do. And personally, I find, whether they're men or women, the people who have a set of personal guidances or a faith or beliefs actually do better in life, because they're the people you want to work with. They're the people who you enjoy spending time with. They're the people who have got something deeper than talking about what was on Coronation Street last night, although I'm sure that's important. So having a personal philosophy actually helps you find other people with a personal philosophy. For me, I'm a Christian, and although I'm not a very happy, clappy Christian, I'm a quiet, in the background sort of Christian, it still matters to me. It matters to do the right thing. And we are missing that, I think, a lot in society. Yet women I speak to do have these, we do have a set of philosophies that it's important, and you can find other women with the same sets of values, and together having that philosophy can get you a long way, in my belief. I have a great belief in people. I'm what's called a redemptionist at heart. I don't mind if people make mistakes, as long as they tell me, and we'll work together to find a way forward. Too many people, in my view, go, oh, they can't do this and they can't do that. Well, let's support each other to do better. So I'm a redemptionist. I like to give people a chance, even if they've cocked up a couple of times. Give people a chance to grow. The other thing I would say is about people as women. I think when you're interviewing people, you get a sense of gut instinct about them. Women have, I think, a very well-developed set of instincts. And I think that happens as you get older as well. You become more sensitive to that person, that interview. Listen to those instincts. Don't try and rationalize everything. If that person may not be the final product, but you feel has got passion and enthusiasm and a good philosophy and will work for you and work with you, then choose that person. And I think a lot of women lose out from quantifying the way that HR does lots of tick boxes. Women should listen to their finer instincts, I believe. Men should too. It shouldn't all be tick boxes, I think. So just bear with me. I turned it off and then it didn't do it, and then it turned it on again. So I try to employ people to work with me who scare me a little. I tease our finance director, who I then employed just as a finance head. And she came in, I interviewed her, and frankly, she scared me absolutely witless. She was so clever. She was so clever and bright and intelligent. She scared me. And I thought, wow, if she scares me, she'll stretch me. So work with people who scare you a little, who will help stretch you. I think this is, for me, it's worked brilliantly, whether you employ men or women. Try to get people around you that are a little bit better than you, because they'll help you take your steps forward. And just on that point 4, push. My belief is that women don't push enough. We don't ask enough questions. I spent half my life as a CEO going, why? Why? Why should that be the case? Why are we doing this? How can we do this better? You know, what's the point? Do you think this is right? And I'm sure that when Neelam was speaking earlier, she's saying in behind all of those words were, is this right that women and young girls are in period poverty? And I want to encourage, and I do encourage the women who work for me to ask more questions, to not be held back. Ask why? Why is that the case? Why should I want to know why 70% of disabled children are living without equipment? I want to know, and I'm going to go to any length to find out the answers and then help unpick the way forward so we can say no to this. We can say that's not right. So I encourage women, and particularly ones I work with, to ask questions. Don't just sit there and listen. Ask, push, understand, listen, learn, and push through. My next point is very quickly, if you've never, who's heard of this? Put your hand up. Have you heard of imposter syndrome? Okay. So how many of you think you've got it? Okay. I found in working with many women over the years, women tend to suffer from this much more than men, I think. You have this sort of lingering feeling that someone any day will turn up and go, I don't know what you're talking about. You're just a girl. What do you think you've got to say on this subject you don't understand? Why don't you just go back to the kitchen? Go and do that thing that you do in there. And you get a feeling that someone will find you out that you're not really good enough. That's imposter syndrome. So when you're having those thoughts, somebody else is winning, you're not winning. You've got to push those thoughts out. If you're doing the job, you're good enough. Somebody believed in you and put you there, so believe in yourself. And listen to the noise in your head. If it's telling you you can't, that's that imposter syndrome. For those of you who have faith, it's the devil, and he's just shouting over your shoulder going, yeah, you can't do that. Don't listen. It's not worth it. Okay. Separation, I think, for women is often a problem. You may not be able to see it, but I'm wearing a brooch. Can you see that? Yeah. So I developed this technique about 10 years ago when I found it difficult to separate between work and home life. Yeah, it's been very valuable to me while I've been working from the end of the kitchen, because I found, and this was a tip given to me by, I won't tell you who, but let's say she's very famous and very busy and needed to find separation. Find something that you can wear or carry or have with you while you're working that's quite obvious, so that when you take it off, you're not working. So my staff laugh if I've got my badge on, if I've got a brooch. For me, it's a brooch. I know other women who wear a particular bracelet. Maybe it's got something engraved on it. There you go, Amina's got one. When you take it off, you're not working. I can take this jacket off. My brooch is gone. I've got a lot of brooches. I hunt eBay. Don't pay more than £5. Okay. So find something that allows you to take off work, ladies. It's a top tip, but I've worked, the last 10 years of my life have been much better because I've been able to find separation. Incidentally, my husband does it and he's got a bracelet, so it works for men too. Be authentic is my last but one point. Be you. Don't try to be anybody else. You're good enough. You're good enough. You're loved and you're respected and you're in the roles you are. And so I would encourage you all to be you, the best possible part of you, but be authentic, be the real you. When I got my OBE, an ex-friend, that's important, said to me, Now you've got your OBE, Sheila, you ought to take elocution lessons so you don't speak like that anymore. Ex-friend, not friend anymore. I wouldn't be authentic if I wasn't being me. I'm proud of coming from the Midlands, and my flat vowels are part of me, so I'm going to be proud of them, okay? So be authentic, find out what being authentic means to you and stick to it. Don't compromise and be just what somebody else wants you to be. Choose to challenge that. And finally, never, ladies, never stop learning. Learn something new all the time. Read a book you'd never think you'd read. Pick the newspaper up that stretches your mind. Do that course in the spare time. Whatever it is, just keep learning, because my view is women shape the world and they shape the next generation. So we need to keep learning to help the next generation be great. So we should choose to challenge, not just for our generation and for us, but for the next generation. And that's it. I've gone on too long. Very sorry, bit passionate. Thank you all for listening.
Wow, Sheila, thank you so much. That was amazing. And that you've shared with us how through your challenges, you've been able to inspire so many people on this call. And I was writing them down as you were talking, all those 8 points. So thank you so much for sharing those. So we've got about 10 minutes left together for a Q&A session now. And there's so many comments in the chat about how everyone's found this so valuable, and each of our speakers has been so inspirational. So that's brilliant. If you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. We'll go through them now. So question for Sarah, what made you decide to go into your profession?
I remember sitting in a science lesson at my high school, and people talking about Casualty, believe it or not, the programme on television. And at that moment, I decided I wanted to be a paramedic. So I remember talking to my careers teacher about how I would go into this career. It was actually a really lovely careers teacher at college that gave me the details and the address on how to apply for something called a cadetship within the ambulance service, which was something that was run 24 years ago. They don't do it anymore, but it was very much like the old YTS or an apprenticeship. And so at the age of 18, following my A-levels, instead of going to university like most of my friends, I started training, and it was a very practical training. It was on-the-job training around a variety of medical secondments, really, for 18 months prior to going out there at 19 and working in Birmingham city centre on an ambulance. I remember at 19 delivering my first baby, going out to my first stab victim that unfortunately died. So at 19 we were just very much thrown into the raw end of the reality of the sad side of life, really, and just trying our best to help people. So
Wow, thank you for that. That's a lot to take in from 19 years old. So question for Satnam, what made you decide to leave the BBC after so many years and join the LEP?
It goes back to growth mindset. I sort of found myself in a position where I was comfortable and doing the job almost with my eyes closed. It was a difficult decision because obviously it was such a high profile role, and you know, you sort of front facing, and you're in everybody's living room sort of up to 3-4 times a week. But I just got to a point where there was something inside me, which there was a voice saying, look, you know what, you've set out to achieve something, you've achieved it. So what's your next part or your next half of your career journey going to look like? And to be quite honest, I'm still on that journey trying to work it out, but I found myself in this role with some comfort in that it is still storytelling, then totally out of my comfort zone because I'm taking on so many new responsibilities. You know, I've never sat in a board meeting until 6 months ago, never written a board paper, and so there's so much stretch. And for me, that's really important, that seeking opportunities to grow in order to work out what I want to do next. It is really, I guess, as simple as that, but it was a bit of a brave and bold move to make. I admit it was a bit scary, but scary is good.
Yeah, exactly what Sheila said as well. Do the things that scare you and be around those people who scare you a little, which is brilliant. So question for Sheila, as you've talked through your bio and everything that all the incredible things that you've done throughout your career, your story seems so well put together and crafted, but how did you create your vision? And did you know at the beginning of what you wanted to achieve, or did you make things up as you went along?
It was all about the passion, the wanting to make a difference for disabled children and their families, using my own experience. When my youngest son was about, I don't know, 11 or 12, 13, maybe he was 13, I knew I had to speak to him because he would have to have more surgeries as he got older. And so we had to have this conversation. And I started to talk to him, say, look, Reece, you know, you've been through a lot, I know, you've done a lot of surgeries, but there will be more to come. And, you know, they are going to be difficult. You'll probably have, and he went, stop. I was like, okay. And he said, I don't need to know this, Mom. And I'll just excuse my language, please. He said, Mom, shit happens. It's what you do with it that counts. Bad stuff happens all the time. It's what you do with it that counts. Difficult challenges happen. It's what you do with it. Satnam spoke about her challenge with cancer. We all have those things in our lives. They're not failures. They're just things that we have to find a way to deal with and learn from and to make us stronger. So how I started was using my own passion and then never stopping, being willing to put 100% of it, not being frightened to challenge, not going into a room and being the diminutive little girl from the West Midlands, but walking up to ministers and walking up to MPs and asking them why it is that children were having to go without and pushing those boundaries, being ballsy, I guess. And some people don't like it. It's one of those things. And I've made mistakes, made lots and lots of mistakes. But my view is that you don't get measured by your mistakes. You should be measured by your successes. And that's what don't forget about the mistakes, learn them, move on, draw a line and move on. So when you set out to do something, just set out with, I want to do this by there. I think Niam said this earlier, you know, it will be great in 12 months' time if we've got to this point. And then you just have to keep making it up as you go along. My husband says, that if I go first, he's going to put that on my headstone. She enjoyed life. She made it up as she went along. I think that's very good. You know, meet each challenge. When you've got a passion on the vision, you just have to meet each challenge and find a way around it or over it or just blooming well move it over. So yeah, we turn over, I don't know, 13, 14 million a year. All of that profit goes to the things that we care about and changing children's lives. But it all stems from that first passion, the thing that you want to achieve. So get that clear, be passionate, be scared, don't be scared, and be authentic as you go on. Decide what you want to do and go for it.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. I like that. Make it up as you go along, but follow your passion as well. So that's brilliant. And so our final question to all of the speakers is, to what extent do you think you've been affected by the gender pay gap? And if you were aware of it, what did you do about it?
Shall I start? Because that's something that's happened to me in my recent years. I think it's really important when you have a gut feeling that something's not quite right, to find an avenue and a way to express it. And actually, I had for a number of years pretty well known deep down that I was not getting paid the same as my colleagues, nor did I have the same title as my colleagues, but I was expected to do the same workload and I was doing it, I was doing the job. But it was actually a male colleague who said to me, Satnam, have you thought about this? I was like, oh yeah. And then obviously there was the bigger movement at the BBC and Women and Pay. And that's when I did, I took a senior manager aside and said, have you thought about this from my perspective? I understand that every year you say there's no money, there's never any money, but actually this is bigger than the budget. This is actually not just about my pay packet, but it's about how the organisation is structured. And it's that, I guess it's that thing of choosing to challenge a cultural structure and an organisational structure, because that's the only way that we will, on one level and a very important level, get pay parity in the workplace.
Brilliant, thank you. Sheila, Sarah, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I'm an employer of lots of women now, and I think I've got about 500 staff, and about 60% of them are women. And so now I get the chance to go, hey, make sure it works. Parity, you can do it. So women moving up through the ladder can actually influence it for other women. We should never underpay. You know, Satnam, it's as much discrimination as any other type of discrimination, and that needs to be called out. So you did it very nicely. Have you ever thought about it from my perspective? Yeah, that's a really good, it's sort of language pattern to use to find the words to challenge. But that's a good tip, Satnam. But make it right for other women when you get a chance to do so.
Brilliant, thank you. So we're coming up to 12 o'clock now. So I hope that everyone's enjoyed the event, and I'd like to thank all of our speakers today, Satnam Rana-Grindley, Sarah Folley and the lovely Sheila Brown, and also a really big thank you to Neil and Hera from Sisters